A Swift Kickin' Ass, episode 70.
Welcome to a Swift Kicking the Ass podcast, hosted by lifelong friends Tom Stewart and John Curren. Today's episode is a special feature covering Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart. I'm joined with my lifelong childhood friend, John Curren. And today we discuss Robert Greene's best-selling book, The 48 Laws of Power, Law 26, Keep Your Hands Clean. John, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing great. And for those of you who can't see, on Tom looks like he has a big zit on his head.
But it's not a zit. I actually have a big gash from opening a car door while trying to talk to someone and not paying attention. I bumped myself in the head. So I have a slightly raised forehead with a big slit along it.
Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is I wanted to give you an example of today's discussion, and that's about keeping your hands clean. I did not keep my hands clean on that last statement. I talked bad to Tom right to his face, and my hands are dirty, and I'll be paying for that probably the rest of this episode.
What you should have done is have one of your kids come in. They could have asked me, and then you would have said, "Why did you do that? That's so rude." Because kids are a great scapegoat, and that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep your hands clean, right, and blame others.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert Greene in the judgment of this chapter says, "You must be a paragon of civility and efficiency. Your hands are never soiled by mistakes and nasty deeds. Maintain such a spotless appearance by using others as scapegoats and cat's paws to disguise your involvement." And as my example it demonstrated, I didn't do that. I didn't try to use my kids as a scapegoat, which would have been perfect.
Well, I think this is very fitting for our times right now. We're approaching election season, or we're already in it for the presidential run between Trump and Hillary, and
Johnson. Don't forget Johnson.
And Johnson. Yes, I'm sorry, Libertarian, and whoever else, what other unknown party might
Jill
be out
Stein
there.
And
but yeah, how many times, John, have we seen already in this campaign of political scapegoats, of people not accepting the buck and passing the buck to someone else?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not a political show, but I think it is a great example of scapegoats. Look at look at Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now she's from South Florida area, and I know a lot of people living in South Florida are familiar with her.
Sure, I set up a live broadcast with her before.
But she was definitely a scapegoat, and in the story, in this chapter, Robert Greene talks about, and I always butcher these names, but is it Cao Cao? He was a great general and imperial minister of China's Han Empire. And he made a strategic mistake in dealing with the wars. His troops were running out of supplies, and he recognized a lot of grumbling within the soldiers and within the ranks. There was a lot of discussion by the soldiers saying that Cao Cao was in his tent and eating good food, and here everyone else was doing without, and having to limit rations and everything like that. And he saw a mutiny really coming, people rising up against him. So even though it was his own fault of why this happened, he called in one of his officers, I guess, in charge,
the main guy that was in charge of food and rations.
Right. So, and he said, I need your service. He says, I'm going to make you an example, and I will be beheading you.
I know, so casually. By the way,
but I'm going to make sure that your family is well taken care of for the rest of their life, and I will look after them. Thank you very much for your service.
And
And
the guy, to his credit, was like, "Hey, I have done nothing wrong." And Tao Tao, I think that's really
yeah,
his name, said, "No, you haven't done anything wrong. You're absolutely innocent here. However, I'm going to cut your head off anyways, and make you my scapegoat."
right. And that's exactly what he did. He not only beheaded the guy, but he put his head on a pike, and that certainly squashed any discussion of who did wrong. And everything that people were distracted, and they didn't care to know the truth. They saw that it was handled, and that was their impression. And I think that's really what happened to Debbie Wasserman Schultz is as well. She
She
took
took
a
one for the
fall,
team. Yeah.
but if you notice, she didn't really lose her job. She lost that job, and they gave her another one.
Well, she's still running. I see signs down here all the time on people's yard.
Oh yeah,
She's running in
she didn't
Florida.
leave the party. They just shifted the attention, but someone had to take the fall for that, and it was her.
You know where throughout the Middle Ages are pretty rife with people being scapegoats. And one of the things, John, that used to happen is kings when they were being reared up and as children, they
Yes.
wouldn't punish them directly. They would not hit them because they considered the king divine. So they had a courtier, like our last episode, which would be a whipping boy, and that's where that term, the whipping boy, came. So they'd spank someone else for when the king did something wrong, and that was his personal scapegoat.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a fun position.
They also had
Neither does Piss Boy. Oh, Piss Boy, it's good to be the king.
Did you ever have you ever heard of the term sin eater?
No, but I do know that the term scapegoat comes from back in Hebrew times when the priest would put his hands upon a goat's head and kind of transfer all of the sins and transgressions of everybody, and then they would take the goat out into the wilderness and abandon it and let it go.
Well, that's very close to what a sin eater was. So in the Middle Ages, there was actually an occupation where someone would come to the funeral, and over the casket, he would break out his Kentucky Fried Chicken, just per se, and start chowing down because he would assume all the sins into the food, and then he would consume them, and thereby taking them away from the person that had passed away.
That just conjures up the my thoughts of these people who go to funerals just for the buffet.
That's wrong, man.
It is. It is. But
You know what else a scapegoat I can remember already. I was in seventh grade. I was sitting in the middle of science class, and what happened? Keith, why'd you do that? I didn't do that. I let one rip, and
yeah.
and immediately blamed a kid in front of me because it was just like by accident, and there's girls in class and other kids.
Silent but
the whole
deadly.
place, it just went, everyone started laughing when I'm pointing to the kid in front of me. He's pointing back at me, and he was actually innocent, but he was my scapegoat.
It's funny to bring that into more current times. I was upstairs with my little boy. He was getting ready for bed, getting his pajamas on, and I had to let one go. And he's like, "Daddy," I was like, "Phineas," and he's like, "Phineas isn't up here." I was like, "That bad dog."
Now, sometimes you can't escape, karma. My daughter, when she was 3, I was eating at this place called Sonny's Barbecue. Had a nice, great dinner. Went over. I was paying the check at the front cashier, and she walks behind me, and she smelled something. It wasn't me, but she automatically assumed it was me, and she goes, "Ew, Daddy farted." And here I am with a 3-year-old, calling me out. The cashier starts laughing. All the people standing in line behind me start laughing. I'm like, "No, I didn't."
Sure, you didn't, Tom. Anyhow, it's the purpose of scapegoating really is to conceal your mistakes and to have a scapegoat around to take the blame for for your misdeeds. I think it's important to kind of bring out in this conversation that we all make mistakes, and mistakes are inevitable. We can, as much as we try to control our actions and our statements, we screw up sometimes, and that's human. But in the world of power, um, if it how you handle your mistakes can have real impact on that power. Think about if a leader, I see this all the time in corporate life about managers or directors or vice presidents, whoever it is, leadership, uh, not making it a habit of apologizing, not making it a habit of admitting that you did something wrong. Uh, and the reason why a lot of people do that is they feel it opens up doubts about about your competence, your intentions, or other mistakes that you may have made along the way. And it kind of a lot of people just think that that's like a corporate death sentence, like a corporate beheading, I guess it
And it
would be.
really goes, this law really goes against your what you've been taught and raised. You're taught to have integrity. I mean, most people are, and you're raised up to say, I admit it, I did something wrong. First leadership rule of leadership is everything is my fault. But unfortunately, in the quest for power, like John says, that can be seen as a sign of weakness. And that's why I think you see so many in politics, why you see so many scapegoats, because they know that that's a political suicide.
Yeah. And
And even when you think back to the, what was it, 2010, when we had the housing collapse, and
yes.
they used the banks as the scapegoat. Yes, the banks were at fault, but there was also many laws that were passed by the government that put them at fault. But they made sure that all the penalties and all the finger pointing went to the banks, and the banks were vilified.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, politics is ripe with examples of scapegoats, and in some cases, there's even some strategy involved in this. Typically, a person, I think, knows of their mistakes when they make them, and kind of has the heads up. I mean, if you did something wrong or if you didn't. Uh, then the question becomes, how do you manage that? And in some cases, a scapegoat is actually sought out ahead of that time, just like General Cao Cao or Tao Tao or however you uh, pronounce that. Um, he knew what was happening. He could see that the troops were getting restless and getting concerned and were kind of plotting mutiny, and he called in a scapegoat to diffuse the issue.
And John, like you said, in the olden days, back in the Middle Ages again, the book talks about the kings that often they would have a person that was designated as their favorite. So they would, bestow a lot of gifts and, become friendly with this person, but they knew with the intention that they would be the scapegoat if they needed them. And eventually they would use them as a scapegoat because once
Yes.
they gained too much of the king's favor, they kind of got a little cocky and, other people were jealous. So when they got rid of the guy, the people that were under him were all happy. They're like, yeah, get that guy out of here because, he had the king's ear.
Yeah, I think that it pertains to modern day life now. I mean, I see this in the work environment. I don't know if I see it as often as I used to, but the boss will always have a favorite or seem to have a favorite. And is that something really to look up to, in this context? Um, your favoritism it has a lifetime on it. And if once they cut you out of favor, you're out, and you might take responsibility for for something that happened that wasn't that you had no part of. So it is something to consider when you're in this role and playing this law.
Absolutely.
Um, okay, so oh,
John,
actually, there was a good. Let me just pull
do you
this
watch
up.
The Wire, John? Have you ever watched that show?
No.
Okay, well, The Wire, it's you can find it like on directed on demand and so forth. It's a good show, but basically it's about the police department has this special detail that's trying to bust these narcotic guys, these drug lords. But these two drug lords, this guy Stringer Bell and Evan Barksdale, what they do is they've never been arrested. They never handle the drugs themselves, but they've set themselves they keep their hands clean, and they have a bunch of lower level guys all around them. They make the power plays and the calls, but someone else does the dirty work. And that's again following along that same line. And you see this in many shows. Game of Thrones
Yeah.
is popular for having scapegoats. I mean, look at
He-
the main guy that got his head lopped off after the first season.
Yeah, that's also true in the in rock and roll world, because especially where drugs are involved. You'll also like the musicians, they won't they have access to any type of drug that they could possibly want, but they're not holding them. They're not in possession of them. There's usually someone in their entourage that's in charge of that.
Right.
It's just my understanding, but that's why you never see, that's why they're not often arrested on drug charges is because they have a scapegoat. Um, I think Robert Greene had a really good passage on this, and I just read it really quickly. It says, "Folly consists not of committing folly, but in being incapable of concealing it. All men make mistakes, but the wise conceal the blunders they have made, while fools make them public. Reputation depends more on what is hidden than on what is seen. If you can't be good, be careful." And actually, that's through Balasar Gracian from 1608 to 1658. So this is, the use of a scapegoat has been around for quite a while.
And think about it, a whole race like with the Jewish people back in the it's not only Germany, but also I think it was France that had issues where they would kick out the money lenders from the Jewish money lenders because they blamed their problems on the Jewish people. And the same thing happened in World War II with Hitler. He all of a sudden, the Jewish people was everything that was wrong with Germany
Yes.
was blamed on them. And it was
Yeah,
an easy scapegoat to get people rallied up behind him.
and we see that today as well in modern politics with illegal immigrants,
Yeah,
or
build a
maybe
wall,
not,
right?
maybe not immigrants, but illegal status. So,
They
there's a
blame
lot of discussion about
right.
that.
A lot of people blame immigrants for taking jobs away or, causing their taxes to be raised or, insurance rates to go up. All kinds of places where we can point the finger.
Yep, yep. So the next part of this chapter is about cat's claws, and cats are usually fluffy and cute, if you're a cat person, and they have very soft paws. The pads are soft, but they also have extremely sharp claws. And with these claws, they can be used to grab things. Um, they're soft and padded, so maybe they don't even um, feel that much. But it says use the claws to pluck things out of the fire, to claw your enemy, to play with the mouse after devouring it. Sometimes you hurt the cat, but most often the cat doesn't feel a thing. And that's really what's behind the use of a cat's claw. It is really, I guess, another way of saying having somebody else do your dirty work for you.
When they talk about don't shoot the messenger, or they have you as a buffer zone, because that came from a fable, John, is what you're talking about. It's about a monkey that he has a friend that's a cat, nice friend, and he uses his cat's claw to fish chestnuts out of a fire, and that's where that term came from.
Well, you can also in modern days, think of military and snipers and assassinations.
Well, how about this? So you talk about the military. What about when they, rather than the military going in, they send the CIA in to get
Right.
the countries opposing military? If there's a civil war, they back one side and they get them to do the fighting for them. That's a perfect technique that a tactic that the U.S. uses quite a bit.
Yeah, it's again, it's just a way to not be directly involved. And when you're asked about it, you're not necessarily lying.
Right. You deny any knowledge of it.
Yeah. Yep. So it's interesting, especially in regards to creating positive change in your life. We often say don't use a scapegoat. Take responsibility for yourself. But we're not talking about admitting it to yourself. I mean, and taking responsibility. We're talking about how you take action on it outside of yourself, and how people view your mistakes, and how that can affect your own power that you have.
John, you know what the ultimate scapegoat is?
I'm about to hear, aren't I?
The devil made me do it.
Yeah.
Or actually, I used one today. My wife was asking how come I was antagonizing her and my daughter today. Why was I pushing her buttons
It's
when
fun.
you know that, and I just said, I'm sorry, it's my nature. I can't help it.
So you used your nature as a scapegoat.
Exactly. Can't help myself. It's just the way I am.
So yeah, that's about it for this chapter, I think.
Yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Make sure you head over to our website of swiftkickinatheass.com. Sign up for our free membership. All it takes is an email, and you get John's simple spending tools. And also you get some cool courses that we have in there, books, all kinds of things that we always constantly add in. John?
Thanks, Tom. And thank you all for listening. And we will kind of be mixing up the laws of power and with our own material as well. But make sure that you reach out to us. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely, man. This is Tom. Peace.
Peace.